Yo, guys, what's going on? Coach Jamie here, and I am so excited to have you here listening to my podcast, Make Time for Your Mind with Coach Jamie, where we will be talking about all things mindset, vulnerability, personal development, ways we can become better individuals. And sometimes in that process, we'll get heavy, sometimes we'll have fun, and sometimes I will be challenging your perspective. The goal, no matter what, though, is to leave you better than you were before you tuned in. So, with that being said, let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for being here. I want to talk about love today. Um, I made a post on my Relentless Glory page the other day on this, and yeah, it's just really been sticking with me. It was something that I had heard a couple years ago, and it never resonated. But it was the concept of doing things from love instead of for love. And this was a very foreign concept to me because I always joke and say I'm a recovering Catholic. But I also just grew up almost like and I don't think it was intentional, but it was just, I was very much trained, if you will, um, that love was conditional. In order for you to get this, you have to do that. You need to earn by doing this, and then this is how you will get something from it. So everything was always just very conditional. Um, and I think that even for me personally, when it came to relationships, it was in order for this person to love me, I have to do everything right. I have to show up and I have to be this way for them. I have to answer this the right way. I have to do X, Y, Z. These are my job descriptions. And as long as I do this, they will pay me in turn with love, right? If I mess up in any of those areas, it's almost like I shamed myself and I blamed myself that the reason why they didn't love me was because I didn't do this, or this. Or the other part that would happen is that when they weren't giving me that love and I felt that I had earned it and I was going above and beyond and I was pouring into that person and over again, and I was expecting for them to do these things for me, and I was over loving them to earn their love, hoping they would finally give it to me in return. I was doing that from a space of for love. And the reason why I want to bring this up is because when I made this post on my Relentless Glory, a lot of people were like, somebody, because I was referencing just like even kind of with our relationship with God and everything, that like, we should be doing it from love, that no matter who you are, no matter what you can do for me, like I'm going to show up and I'm going to love you regardless. But we live in a world that also, and I'm the first to admit, I have an entire freaking like coaching session I do on boundaries. So like, yes, I think there's a point that there is a sense of wall that has to be up and you have to know not to let people take advantage of you. But I feel like everybody always goes to the extreme, right? We need water to survive, but water can also kill you. I need to go back on all my podcast episodes so far and hear just how many episodes I reference that quote, because if you are a frequent listener of mine, you should know that is my favorite quote. Anyways, back to what I was saying. But we have a tendency of taking everything to the extremes and treating everything as black and white. And there were people who were commenting on the post that I had made about that, where it's like, yeah, you need to stop giving your love to the wrong people and let the right people love you. Agreed. But then what happens is that we now are going to start not loving people because they're not loving us in return. That's the very meaning of doing something for love. So people are staying in crappy relationships because they're quote unquote giving love to the wrong people, but it's because the reason they're giving them love is because it's coming from a space of for love. I am doing this for you so I can prove to you how much you mean to me and how much I care about you, with the hopes that they're going to do that in return. But if you genuinely could love somebody from a distance do something from love and maybe not be pouring all of your energy into it because of what you're going to get out of it, maybe you would be treating that differently. Now, again, this isn't a one size fits all statement. Because even the personal example that keeps coming to mind, I was in a very toxic relationship. It was abusive on both sides, but it was physically abusive and it was emotionally abusive. And I even used to like say that I would go above and beyond for this person, and I would bend so much that I would break, and then somehow I would find a way to break again. So it was not a healthy relationship, and it was a relationship that neither of us should have been in as long as what we did. But the problem is that, again, for me, I was so desperate to receive love that I was willing to put myself through that. I was loving that person and contorting it into my brain that this was the one for me. This was the person, and I just had to be with them, and it had to work. But it was because I was hoping for love in return. So I wasn't actually in that relationship and approaching it from a space of love in that regard, of just doing it from love, that despite what you can do for me, I'm going to love you anyways. Because if that would have been the case and I didn't have any expectation of that anyway, maybe I wouldn't have even ended up noticing that there was any reason for us to be together in that regard. And I wouldn't have wanted to share myself intimately with that person anymore. I don't change that situation for the world because I learned so much from it. And if you're somebody who is in a very, very dangerous situation, then yes, know that you have to get away from that. But again, on the flip side, and this is where the other extreme is that people are saying is now these people don't deserve love. Okay, well, technically I don't deserve love. Like none of us are worthy of anything, right? Like we are all imperfect people. So we're all sinners. We all do something wrong that technically makes us unworthy. So the moment that I become perfect and my worth is 100% just end all be all, then I can have the right to judge that somebody else isn't deserving of love. That again goes back to this conditional way of thinking and how we're showing up in love. But again, that extreme of no, not to give this love to this person because they don't deserve it. I don't think that that's the right mentality to have there. I think it's in general of knowing and discerning how you show up and love them. Maybe the way you show up and love them is that I'm loving you and respecting you and I both enough to not partake in this relationship because you can't do anything for me in return, and I can love and I can care about you from a distance. And maybe that also can be the reason why you can find the right support system that is more compatible to you. Maybe me walking away from this situation and loving you and not bashing you to other people, maybe that's simply what it is. From love, telling somebody, like, again, going back to my toxic situation that I was in at a very young age for 5.5 years. I used to freaking bash that guy like nobody's business. And like now as an adult, I'm like, no, like he's a human and he's a good person. We just were two people that shouldn't have been together, but that doesn't make me better or worse than him, or vice versa, that he was better or worse than me, that I wasn't deserving of his love or he wasn't deserving of mine. It's just, we weren't compatible. And so like from afar, like how I can show up from a loving space is by not holding that grudge and judging and throwing them under the bus for the things that they did to me, you know? I hope this is all making sense because I know I'm kind of talking in circles, but this is the fun part about being my podcast is if I want to have a point to it, I can. And if I want to just kind of ramble, then you get to hear me as I dump out my thoughts. But yeah, I think that we spend a lot of time breaking our own hearts because we're desperately seeking love so much. And we end up letting ourselves down in that process because we're now expecting people to meet our expectations for what we've put in our brain of what we should have, or even like, oh, now I'm just really going down a dating perspective rabbit hole when I just actually meant to do this initial episode on relationships in general. But I got down a spiral of TikTok videos, and it was like all about women, and they're like, if a guy isn't going to take me here, if he isn't going to do this for a first date, or if he doesn't spend more than $150 on me on a first date, red flag, I'm not dating him. And I'm like, what in the world? Now, all of a sudden, he's a bad human because he's not, like, you're literally putting that high of an expectation on the person that's going to take you on a date that he has to spend $150 to you to prove that he's worthy of your time and attention. Like, why? Why are we putting these conditions on people so much? And why I'm going down this tangent, it'll come back to me. Um, it just is crazy. It's crazy. Because of like of experiencing the love, right? And doing something for love. Like somebody has to earn your love by showing what they can do for you. So if I can provide for you by dropping at least $150 on you on a first time meeting to woo you, then you'll love me, or then I'm worthy enough of your attention. Girl, get off your high horse. Like, I'm sorry. I'm also in a phase of my life right now that, like, yes, I am team female power and all of that, but some of us ladies, like, we have taken it far too far. How about genuinely getting to know somebody and seeing if you guys are compatible and you align on a foundational level of life? And men, this also goes for you too, right? Like, why are we trying to prove and gain that for love when we should just be showing up from love? Like, if you genuinely are just a good person and you genuinely care for somebody, and don't get me wrong, when we're also talking about relationships, there's still going to be a form of standard or expectation to want to grow an intimacy in that way. But again, it's like, I want you to really think about, when you are doing something, is it because you're hoping somebody's going to do something for you in return, or are you just doing it out of the goodness of your heart? Okay. Now that I went down that random tangent, thank you for following me on this crazy route that I'm taking. The other side that I've heard people talk about is like, yeah, but what about people pleasers? People pleasers that just give all the time because they want to do it from the genuine, space of their heart. And it always happens to be that there's these other people that you have to look out for that are just takers. Again, recognize that. Like, if it is something that is getting to be a point that you now are feeling this person is taking advantage of you, it doesn't mean you have to cut them off, that you have to say that they're not deserving of your time and attention, but maybe it just means that you have to put some space there. And again, this is where we can establish a form of boundary that from love, you can be like, hey, I care a lot about you, but right now this is just taking a lot from me, more than what it's giving, and it's wearing me down. And this doesn't mean that I love you any less. It's just some of these things that I have to stop loving you from this standpoint, right? But again, you can still do things from a space of love. I hope this ruffles some feathers, this episode, or I hope this triggers some thoughts or rebuttals or whatever, because I'd love to have a reason to come back and talk on this subject, because this is one thing that's kind of the downer of me just talking by myself, is like, I don't have a conversation flowing where I can open up more and more perspectives. I'm just stuck in my brain of trying to share a little bit of everything that pops in as I communicate that. So please share your feedback if there's something that you want to agree with, or if you want to deny. And I want to be able to have a conversation with this, because I think also too, there's a lot of power in being open-minded and being willing to have your perspective challenged. That's where true growth happens for me, right? Like, the toughest times of your life is going to teach you real growth and wisdom, but also like allowing yourself to be challenged and open to seeing things from a different perspective is huge. It's all of what I do in my coaching too. But if you're open to receiving it and you're willing to have, a neutral conversation about this on how we can grow and we can provide different insights and ideas to learn how to think for ourselves and grow as individuals, so we can grow together and become better people, not only for our own well-being, but for the being of those around us. That's how we change the world, right? So, from love, Coach Jamie out.